Finance Committee meeting last week. And we will then open it up to any public comment from anybody in the audience or anybody that is participating via Zoom. So that is how I intend to conduct things this evening, and we'll proceed that way. So I am up, and I'm going to try to share my screen, Brian. I think you might have to allow me to.
Yeah, I'm going to work on that.
If you go to share screen.
Make co-host?
No, I don't think you need to do that. Just go down to share screen and then click the arrow. No.
Sorry.
No, yeah, multiple participants. I think that works. Yeah.
Try that.
So let me see if I can share.
I'm getting it. Obviously, you guys are in this meeting. I'm trying to access it from the town website. It's giving me an invalid link.
By the way,
It went in through.
So if you go
if
to
it doesn't matter,
Lunenburg calendar,
I just sent you a clearer presentation if it makes a difference to you.
Okay.
Those pictures are now clear, almost clear.
All right. Well, let me pull that up.
Yeah, that's how I'm going into it, from Lunenburg calendar,
yeah. and then
pulling up
clicking
the
that link.
agenda, clicking on the link.
Bear with us.
Invalid
Ladies and gentlemen.
ID.
That's how I got it.
I'm in through Zoom,
That's how I got in.
Yeah, I just clicked on the link.
unless the server's overloaded.
Try signing into Zoom.
Yeah, I think we have too many participants.
It's too many participants.
Someone got off. They got kicked.
I was going to put Dave in the waiting room.
Oh, this is my Zoom right here.
We'll try it this way.
Craig, you're not coming up as co-chair, so that's not going to get,
Well, I think I can, though.
oh, okay. You haven't selected it yet.
No, hold on. How do I do this? I don't know how to do this with one monitor.
Click on this,
Clicking.
click
Oh,
on the
right there.
presentation.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yes, it's-
I've never done this with one monitor, but
That works.
I apologize. I'm used to doing this in my office. Okay, so now you can see my screen
But now
here.
go into presentation mode.
Yeah, how do you do that,
You're
Dave?
going to do enable editing, I think, too, in the yellow.
0406.
Yeah, and then you should be able to then start it.
It's the presentation.
Slideshow,
Where is that?
top middle, top it all over
I can't.
the right. Slideshow, down.
Oh, right here.
And it looks like a
And then
slide.
from beginning?
Okay, good.
Brian, does
Sorry.
it someone leave?
I'm gonna email.
Yes, that's you.
I'm just gonna leave. I just want to see.
Oh.
It said town.
Okay, well, I can, yeah, if you email it to me, I could share it. Oh, it's time for yours.
I know, I turned down my volume so I don't hear the dings because then it echoes.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Okay, so, apologize for the administrative work there to get going. So again, as we referenced, this is the TCP Building Design Committee, and this evening we're going to discuss both the renovation option, the renovation project, which in summary would renovate the TC Passios building to be used as town hall offices, community spaces, and for school uses, and we'll get a little bit more into the specifics of those uses in a few minutes. So there is a lot of information located in the. So let me just on this slide, I'll take the opportunity to just give a quick history of what happened. This committee was formed in 2019, in the fall of 2019, to come up with a cost estimate and design development documents for the renovation of the TCP building for the uses I just referenced. That work culminated in the preparation of a final report which summarized all of those efforts, all of the studies that were put into the building, all of the surveys that were done, all of the design development documents such as floor plans that were developed, summaries of all of the meetings that were done with all of the future stakeholders that would ultimately be using the building, such as all the town departments in town hall, the school department, and all the various uses that the school would be using. and those kind of things, and also a summary of the costs that came up, that study came up with. There's been many participants over the years. My name is Greg Roy. I'm the chairperson, and you can see the other members of the board there, both past and present. So there's been a lot of effort put in by a lot of folks to get to the point where we are today. I'm not quite sure which camera I'm supposed to be looking at, so I apologize if I'm pointing my eyes in the wrong direction. So the work that we progressed through, and I summarized some of that in the previous slide, but step one was to do a detailed, thorough assessment of the current building. Again, the task of the committee, as was set forth back in 2019, was the renovation of TCP building. So the first step that the architectural team took was to do an overview and a real detailed analysis of the structural condition of the building, the condition of the existing systems, the exterior envelope, windows, hazardous materials, inventory, and the like. And then we advanced into an establishment of what the final uses would be in the space. Both the architects team and this committee put in quite a bit of time interviewing different department heads and groups in town that would be final stakeholders and users of the building to assess what their specific needs were from a space need, from storage need, office space needs, and how the space would flow. This committee had multiple meetings to assess. There was lots of different interest from the community relative to this building. So this committee had spent lots of time hearing from all kinds of different folks to determine what the final makeup of the building was. At the end of the day, the space is limited, so we had to make some tough decisions. We discovered that there was more interest in user groups that were interested in using this building than we had space for. So the committee had to make some tough decisions. But at the end of the day, we came up with a plan that we believe is true to the charge that this committee was given, which is the reuse of the building for town hall, school, and community uses, and we'll talk a little bit more about the specifics of that in a bit. Of course, the cost estimate was arrived at. We spent quite a bit of time in the months leading up to the spring annual town meeting of last year. Was it 20? I'm losing track of the years. I think it was last year, 2021, yeah.
May 2021.
May 2021. The years are blending into one. We spent quite a bit of time this past late winter, spring, trying to sharpen the pencil on the cost. The construction cost estimate initially came in a few $1 million higher than what we landed on. And there'll be more discussion on costs a little bit later in the presentation as well. But at the time, back in the spring, the construction cost estimate was estimated to be $18.5 million, and I'm rounding the numbers. When you add in the soft costs, which are things that need to be purchased to go into the building, design and sort of design fees and other soft costs that go into a building like this, the final construction cost or the final funding in total, as estimated back in the spring, was $23.5 million. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit, but that estimate now has to be accelerated due to specifics of the construction climate that we're in, which are unique to 2021, and the supply chain shortages that we're seeing labor shortages that we're seeing, supply chain issues that we're seeing and labor shortages that we're seeing. The architects, as recently as a few weeks ago, have now advised us that we need to update the renovation cost estimate, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few slides. So this is a picture of the proposed use of the building. We have sort of three main wings, if you will. The west wing that we're showing on this plan is dedicated primarily for town offices and sort of the administrative office space that would be programmed into the building. The central wing here is more for community spaces. So we have several meeting rooms in here. We have the access cable in here. And then we also have the north wing, which is dedicated to the school uses, such as some of the before and after day programs and the like. So we have some blow-ups here. It looks a little skewed, but and some of this might be a little difficult to see, and I apologize for that, but it looks pretty good. So you can kind of see here that this is a configuration of what the office suites would look like. We have the main suites being planning, Board of Health, conservation, assessing, the town manager's suite, finance, accounting, building commissioner, and the town clerk, and then sort of in the upper left-hand corner, that is the school offices, administrative offices in that space. And again, this is using the existing footprint and renovating the existing footprint of the TCP building. This is what the committee came up with. The school-based usage. This is the north wing that I referenced earlier. You can see that we have room for the ACE program. These are all school related uses. So we have the ACE program. We have a significant amount of space designated for school storage. We have the Community Link program, early learning, and then quite a bit of space dedicated for extended day in this wing of the building, which is both before and after school programs. And then we have some additional general town storage space in this wing as well. And then we have sort of the middle of the building, the central wing, which has multiple meeting rooms programmed in. So in the brown hatched area here, you have two primary meeting rooms, and then opposite the hallway, you have the PAC suite with the studio and all of the controls and things that they need to have in their space, as well as the Lions Club food pantry, which we have programmed in this location here. The balance of the building, where the existing gymnasium would remain for use as a gym or multi-purpose room. There was a lot of groups in town that utilized the gym, such as the Boys and Girls Club, the Senior Center, and others. So we felt that emerged as a pretty important space to preserve. The cafeteria is located. I don't know if people don't see that, so that's good. The cafeteria would be converted into a meeting room that would be sort of take the place of, or function like the Bellotta meeting room has for us. So that would be a rather large meeting room that would be set up for sort of our larger, more formal public meetings and public hearings. And the space for the kitchen would be preserved, although we did not program in a renovation of the kitchen. We did program in preserving the space so that a kitchen could be brought up, that kitchen space could be renovated and brought up to current code in the future. A quick look at the site plan. Again, this is all discussing the renovation project. You have the sort of in dashed line here, all the way around. You have the footprint of the existing building. The pink areas are the existing paved areas. So you have some sidewalk that goes all the way around the building, almost completely around the building. And then you have some of the existing parking areas that are shown down in this area in pink. The green is the proposed additions, proposed pavement modifications that would be proposed as part of this project. So we are proposing, as you can see, to have introduce a new circulation pattern around the building with some additional parking on the side and rear portions of the building to accommodate the additional uses that would be in the building. So also, if you can envision the triangular grass area that exists in the front of the building, that's here. I think people can see my screen. We are also proposing some additional parking in this area to both support the building, but also when the building's not being fully utilized, all of this parking will help to support the other uses that are located on this site, such as the fields. So on a Saturday when we have a busy soccer schedule or sports schedule, this parking would be available for those uses too, as well as to support also the middle high school in large events and things. So we had developed as I referenced earlier, we had developed a final construction cost estimate of back in April hard construction would have been $18.5 million. When you add in the soft costs to that, you get to a total renovation cost, and again, this is back in April, of $23.5 million, and I'm using round numbers. Fast forward 6 or so months to a few weeks back, when we received the cost estimates on the, which we're going to present in a minute, we received the cost estimates for what it would cost to build to tear down the existing TCP building and build a new building, it caused us to question that those costs were high enough, and the price per square footage was significant enough for us to ask the architect if the numbers that they had quoted us or estimated back in April were enough to construct the project. And in fact, they are seeing an acceleration of around 30% in construction prices in 2021. So they advised us that the cost estimate that was prepared in last April needed to be adjusted upward by approximately 30%, excuse me, not 30 million. So it needs to be up, so that the numbers that you're seeing on your screen would be the new cost estimates for the renovation of TCP. So the final hard construction estimate sits at 22.5, round numbers, $1 million. And the total renovation cost, which again would include soft costs for the things you need to buy for the building, engineering, architectural fees, those kind of related soft costs, would bring the total renovation project cost to almost $29 million, $28.9 million. So that's where that cost stands today. Bear with me. So where we've been since last spring, at the annual town meeting in 2021, the committee presented an article to investigate what it would cost to tear down the existing building and to do a new build. At the time, we felt that the cost was significant enough to warrant a study to see how much it would, as for a sort of a apples-to-apples comparison of what a new building would cost. And the town meeting ultimately authorized that funding. It was in the amount of $54,000. And since then, we've been working with the architect to do that preliminary design and come up with a cost estimate for that comparison. So we reviewed several concepts with the architect. All of them were, the task that the committee had was to provide the town with an apples-to-apples comparison. So we programmed all of the uses in the new building that had been determined would go into the renovation project. And the intention, again, was to provide the town with, if we did the same program in a new building, this would be the cost, so that the town could see what that difference is. For the new building, we took a new look at parking space layout, and also a fresh look at how many parking spaces would be required. But in general, we worked with the numbers that were presented on the renovation project for that as well. One of the advantages to building a new building is to be able to build in a little bit more future, build with the future in mind. So we looked for opportunities when they presented themselves to plan in, and again, everything's preliminary stage here, but to plan in and to look for areas where a new building could be expanded in the future, years down the road, if it ever needed to be the case. So this is a picture of the proposed site plan that was generated. As you can see, it's an L-shaped configuration. You can just barely make out, I think you can see it on the screen, the dashed lighter line that you can see underneath the building is the outline of the existing TCP building, so you can get a reference for the size and the location of this preliminary design of what a new building could look like. The new building could be pushed further back from the existing paved area to give us a little bit more space between the circular triangular area in the front, to give us a little bit more plaza area, which this plan does. This plan programs in parking in similar areas that was proposed in the renovation project, but it doesn't require necessarily a full circular paved, permanent, circular vehicular pattern around the building, although we did plan in a fire access lane in that area. But it does preserve, in that respect, it preserves a little bit more green space, particularly in the back of the building, where there'll be quite a bit of green space where the old building was. A quick look at the floor plan. Generally speaking, the left side here would be designated for town offices. The right side of the screen would be designated for community uses. This entire leg of the building also has a second floor, which I'll show in a second. And then this upper, toward the pink areas would be dedicated for school uses. The upper floor, as I referenced, it would be over this lower section of the building, and would have school offices, some additional town offices on the second floor, and then some additional community space. The access cable would be shown in blue here. I think we have some blow-ups of this too, so I'm going to keep trucking. Yeah, these are the ones that are a little blurry, so we'll see what we can do to clean these up. But so on the first floor, again, we have town offices, planning, conservation commission, board of health. I'm going to miss somebody. Treasurer, accounting, and the like. The town clerk's office is shown here in the tan. And on the second floor, we have the town manager's office and IT department sort of on the front portion of the building. On the second floor, across the hall from the town manager's office, we have these are the slides, right? a little
Yes.
blurry, yeah. So I apologize to everybody that's watching. These are a little blurry, so we do need to clean these up. But this would be the school administrative offices that would be on the second floor on that sort of town hall wing of the building. The school wing, again, this would just be the single floor portion that sort of on the northerly side of the site, and would have all of the same uses, ACE, community link, early learning, and extended day programs along with storage that we had programmed into the renovation space. So the middle portion of the building, sort of between those two wings then, would be the, what we're designating as the community space. And there are several meeting rooms. At the very, the side closest to the sport fields, if you will, we would have what we're calling a multi-purpose room, but that would really function as a gym. So it'd be set up to be able to be used as a gym and for other large events that the town would like to hold, could be used in that location. There's an area, again, designated for a kitchen. And then this room right here would be function as our large meeting room that would sort of function in the same manner as this room that we're in this evening. Additional conference rooms and meeting rooms on the lower level as well as the upper level to accommodate lots of community space and uses in those spaces. So some highlights from the design, highlights on the design considerations. There's separate entrances for the school and town offices and community spaces. And the building has been set up so you can secure different wings for different times of day based on how the building is being used. So we, in both the renovation and in the new construction, security for the student uses of the building was very important. So this design would accommodate that. There's, of course, additional parking which can be utilized by the town and/or for other school, sporting, community events in the same manner as the renovation project. As we pointed out, there's green space, more green space in the back for use by employees and also for school-based programs. Pardon me. And as I mentioned, the school wing, which would be built as a single floor under this plan, would be constructed so that you'd have the ability to put a second floor on that and expand and get some additional space if it's ever needed in the future. And we pushed the parking to outside of the center triangle, so we didn't program parking in this plan for the center triangular lawn area so that it could be preserved for community events and things. So I think that was a consideration as well. Just a quick breakdown of square footage uses. And these are just these specific uses. It doesn't get to the entire square footage of the building, but it speaks to the primary uses of the building and gives you a sort of a comparison of what the new building would provide for square footage and what the renovation building provided for square footage. There are some discrepancies here and there in the renovation project. We're really looking at trying to build in efficiency with that renovation project. So we were constrained, of course, with the space that we had in the building. We tried where we could to keep some of the existing walls in place, so that it wasn't a wholesale. It didn't necessarily need to be a wholesale rework of some of the interior walls. So you have more flexibility in a new build, of course. So some of those numbers were able to be refined a little bit when we look at program those same uses and spaces into a new building. So that's why some of the numbers are different. But overall, you can see that we're pretty close on those primary use areas. So, at the end of the day, the important thing we were trying to get to was to get an apples-to-apples comparison of the cost to build a new building that would provide the same programming as what we had programmed into the renovation project. So again, I presented earlier the cost to renovate, which has now been estimated to be almost $29 million, including hard construction and soft costs. The cost for a new build is estimated to be $39,637,000 and change. So you can see there's a pretty significant difference with the cost there for the new build alternative. This gets to what we were, what I was describing earlier, what we saw happen in this, primarily in this calendar year. We've seen, or the construction industry has seen quite the spike in costs. So the estimates that we got for the new build project, I'm going to go back a slide. The estimates that we got for this, this hard construction cost of almost $31 million was the architectural team going out to subcontractors and actually getting prices from folks doing this in the field real time. So this was not just an architect's estimate. This was also, this had subcontractors such as electricians and HVAC contractors giving their insight into this. So what those folks are seeing is almost a 30% increase in acceleration in costs in a very short period of time. And again, as we alluded to earlier, those costs are due to supply chain issues that we're having, currently global supply chain issues that we're having, which is impacting particularly the price of steel, price of, we all saw and heard either firsthand or heard our friends talk about the price of lumber, what happened with lumber over the past year. That's of course come down a little bit, but there's other things that are such as gypsum and wire and pipe and all things that are contributing to that, as well as to just a general increase in labor costs due to labor shortages. And that's what they're coming up with for that's how they came up with that acceleration. So I just wanted to mention that to everybody, that these are the architect giving us real-time data and real-time visibility into what they're seeing and what the contractors are seeing in the field. So, so this is a comparison of what I presented earlier, the rental cost estimate that we had developed earlier compared to what the rental cost estimate is today, with all those acceleration factors built in. I guess that's it. I think that's it.
All right, I sent you a link, if you wouldn't mind stopping your screen share there while you pull up your email.
Yeah. So bear with us. We're going to pivot to a different presentation on Article 8, right? 8.
Yeah, correct.
And then we will take, how do I stop my, all right, here. Sorry, can't do two things at once. And then we will take questions. So bear with me.
Do you have to sign in?
Boy, I don't know if I know my Apple ID, buddy. Do you
want to take any questions on the original presentation, or do you want to wait to give this one?
Well, I can't do that and do this at the same time, but someone else could.
If I could, I'll add a
You gotta
comment
answer the
in while you're
questions, too.
working on
Yeah,
that.
go ahead, you can add
Long
comment, Dave.
in.
Dave Passios, member of the committee. I would have made this comment at the end of the presentation anyway, but seeing as we need a couple of minutes to get technology working the way we need it to, after all is said and done with this entire presentation, you're going to have a pretty good picture of why we're looking at doing this project and the deficiencies that are in place presently in all of the buildings affected. I just want to make the comment that both projects address the deficiencies. I've said it before, that's why you renovate a building. You fix the deficiencies of a building and you upgrade it and set up the space for the program that you've worked into the building. Both of these projects accomplish that. Both of them accomplish it for a different dollar amount. And I don't think any of us are happy with the numbers, but it is where we are. And it may get a little bit cheaper in the near term, but the more we delay this, we still have that factor of 4% plus or minus that costs are going to rise. And this is the best information we've been able to pull together in the time that we've had to bring numbers to the town and the citizens. And again, I hope that they get to debate it and actually vote on the articles on town meeting floor. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just say, as we're trying to get we're having technical difficulties with the second presentation, I apologize, but to Mr. Passios' point, we are looking for public comment on this, and public involvement in this, so we're hoping that folks will speak up either tonight, we have a few, and, but, particularly at town meeting. I know that there are, the final decision for whether or not the final decision for whether or not things would be passed over or not hasn't been decided yet. But we do intend to give a thorough update, and we hope that there will be some thoughtful and good discussion relative to that at least, so. Anybody else?
Yeah, for the people at home, I just want to say hi. Dawson, Oscar, Carter. And town meeting is next Tuesday, November 16th. Hope to see everyone there.
I'm going to try signing in.
I had to text them, make sure they were watching Channel 8 or Channel 9.
They were watching Channel 9, you had to tell them to go back to Channel 8, you know?
Switch it up.
One other comment to save a little bit of time also, again, a comment I would make later on. Brian, your announcement of special town meeting was perfectly appropriate with my follow-up here. And that is, if you're a citizen out there, a taxpayer, no matter which way you feel about this project, please come to the special town meeting.
Right.
Help us present this to the voters and allow you to vote on the articles. And the only way, apparently, that sounds like right now that that's going to happen is for you, the voters, to show up at special town meeting, and if you feel appropriate, vote against passing over the articles so that we can fully vet the articles as they're presented in the warrant, and then take a vote. That's the only way, apparently, it looks like right now that the articles will come fully onto town meeting floor. If you guys are ready, I'll stop talking.
I think we are ready. Again, I apologize for and I can, you just tell me when you want to.
All right.
or you can do it, whatever.
Quick tip.
Thanks.
So first, good evening. My name is Micah Ray Jeffries, member of the TCP Design Committee, also member of the Lunenburg Select Board. So tonight, I will be presenting information related to Article 8. Although this is not part of the public hearing per se, the information contained, we believe, is relevant. So this is just the article as it's written. We can go ahead and skip this and go to the next slide. But you know, I'm summarizing that one. The gist of this article, which again is not for this public hearing, but what this article seeks to do is to commit $350,000 for the design and engineering required to construct a new town hall and community center. So what a yes vote to this article will accomplish is identifying that the town wants to move forward with this town hall and community center at the location currently occupied by the TC Passios, and will commit those funds from free cash to complete the building design process in anticipation of a vote at the 2022 annual town meeting. So some terminology we've discussed today, and this is just to highlight a couple key points here, is when we talk about program space, we're speaking to what the space is used for. When we speak about adjacencies, it's what's next to what. And then I help explain the schematic design phase and the design development phase. So the schematic design phase is when you're conducting those program assessments, surveys, and field tests while engaging stakeholders in order to identify the feasibility of a project, to prepare a diagram or depiction and its rough estimated cost. The design development phase advances that schematic design by conducting an analysis of major building components, including foundation structures, electrical systems, plumbing, HVAC, which are your heating, ventilation, air conditioning systems, in order to prepare detailed floor plans, architectural renderings, and its estimated cost. So this next slide, so this next slide just speaks to how we design public projects and here in Massachusetts, and this is based on Mass General law. And so in Massachusetts, all public projects go through this 5-step process. Schematic design and design development phase can be combined into one step. But we go through the schematic design, the design development, and then we go through the construction documents, bidding, value engineering. Value engineering is when you have those bids and then you're going through those bid specifications and you're looking for opportunities to reduce cost, whether it's changing finishing materials, whether you're adjusting, hey, maybe we don't need this boiler system, maybe we can do something else. So it's a process to really change kind of material that go into some of the building to reduce cost. Also, it can be related to construction process. And then the construction administration overall. So what this pie graph speaks to is also how we come up with these design and engineering costs. So typically in a project, your design and engineering costs are going to be about 8% of your total project cost. We estimate that that's 5 to 10%. And so within that 8%, when you're looking at how is that design engineering company then billing that out. Now this pie graph depicts kind of a typical diagram. It's not the Bible, but it's a typical diagram of what many firms do, in which that first 20% is billed during the schematic design, and then the next 20% billed during design development. Typically, you're at a point at the end of your schematic design process in which you identify, again, the feasibility of a project, but you're really at a decision point at the end of the design development phase on, hey, do we want to move forward with this plan? So as we've talked today about, this slide talks about how town buildings are currently used. And just to orient you to this slide, the color green identifies a town use, the color blue identifies a school or educational child type use, and the yellow identifies a community use. Now, when we talk about Town Hall, we also have notations about capacity. Town Hall is at 100% capacity. The Ritter Building is also at 100% capacity. And the TC Passios is at about 97% capacity of the usable space. We believe that about a little more than 15% of the building is unusable, and I will get into that in additional slides. Now, one other thing to note here is as we look at the TC Passios row, we see that Community Link, Extended Day, and PAC are highlighted in blue. And this is because these are the three entities that pay rent. We do not, as a town, appropriate funding for the TC Passios building, so we're able to keep the lights on and keep the heat on by that rent collected from those paying entities. Now, another thing I want to note is that as we talk about this renovation and also a new build, both seek to consolidate all of these uses into that design with the addition of additional community space. So this next slide, the next couple slides speak to current conditions of certain areas within these town buildings. So as we look at this slide, what you're seeing on the left-hand side is you're seeing our sewer line in Town Hall. Now, we had a project several years back to upgrade this sewer line. We continue to have difficulties with this sewer line backing up. The result of it being that sewage goes into the basement of this building. We have an earthen floor. So you're seeing that there's plastic all over the flooring, and we also no longer store anything in the town basement for this reason. Now, on the right side, you're looking at a couple of things here. So this image is taken from underneath Town Hall. So straight up would be the the treasurer's office and tax collector's office, and then the next floor up is where we're currently at it in Town Hall. So this is the area of the stage. What you're looking at here is the elevator off in the distance, and then these support columns are basically where a little bit behind where the podium typically is. Now, what you're also identifying in this photo is you're seeing on that back wall of Town Hall, you're noticing that the building is leaning. So it was identified in 2016 during this TAPE study that the building would need structural stabilization, and this is just a visual indicator of why that was identified as being an upcoming need. Now, the next slide speaks to the columns, or identifies some of these core columns here that are supporting Town Hall. We see significant cracks in these columns. And again, this one right here, you can see that it's no longer touching the actual structure of the building. It's leaning against some conduit. We identify more columns. There's some old telephone poles down here that have been added in to help out as well. And then we generally see just what the wiring situation is. Certainly, no one would be allowed to have that in their own homes. The next slide continues on the attic of Town Hall. So what we see over here on the left-hand side are a bunch of those light spots or holes. We're seeing some wood rot. We see some distressed wood. In this photo, this is over the front portion of Town Hall. And we see a rather large 2 feet by 2.5 feet wasp nest. I will say that nest is no longer active, but it speaks to a continuous problem that, as reported by those who work in Town Hall, that the building has birds and squirrels and wasps, as well as mice. Now, at Ritter Building, which is where we currently have the Board of Health, the conservation agent is there. We have our inspectional services are there. The planning department's there. And so what these slides identify is how we store town storage at Ritter Building. So again, we don't have storage at Town Hall at all, and the storage that we have at Ritter Building is daily. I wouldn't say daily storage, but this is storage that's routinely accessed throughout the week, several times a month, and this is how that storage is accessed. It's similar to the hatch that many people have in their homes. By no stretch does this comply with any kind of OSHA standard, but as you see, this is how staff are coming up and down these stairs. It's certainly not an ideal situation, especially for our employees who've been at the town for well over 20 years. Now, town storage at TC Passios. TC Passios is where then the majority of the storage occurs for the town offices and also for the school departments. So this slide just depicts that typical kind of classroom setup of what the storage is like. Now, on the left, you see a classroom that's mostly at capacity with town storage. On the right, you see a big open space here with the dark stain in the ceiling. Now, part of the reason for this staining in the ceiling is because the roof is leaking. And the next slides just currently, go into this in more detail, in which we're identifying some of these areas that are leaking in the building, and then also we see the impact of that leaking onto asbestos flooring. So all of TC Passios has asbestos tile. Another name for that is tile with asbestos-containing material. As the tile gets wet, it does this kind of bubbling effect. Asbestos poses a hazard to human health when it's disturbed. So walking into this room, stepping on this floor, will release those particles into the air. I know we've all seen those mesothelioma commercials all over the television for the last several years. But that's the long-term effects of long-term exposure to asbestos. In the short term, it poses a health hazard. So this speaks to why we have a portion of the building that is not usable because of the leaking roof and the resulting damage that occurs. Now, what's not depicted here is that we also have a library, old library at the school that is completely unusable. It's not a room that even staff go into because of the mold that's present from the leaking roof. Now, this slide just depicts, again, a continuation. Just one slide shows the buckets in the hallway, just a continuation of that leaking roof. And the right slide here depicts our lounge, our staff lounge at the TC Passios. So again, most of the uses at TC Passios are child-related. We also have PAC over there. So if any of the school administrative staff opt to take a lunch break, this is the space that's made available to them. You can look at the ceiling and see the staining all over the tile. You can see the general kind of just dinginess of the room, the air handler that's right over the table. Nothing about this room is inviting or really appropriate. So, what are the problems that we're trying to solve here? And we're trying to solve the lack of adequate space for town offices, the inefficiencies in daily operations due to multiple locations. There's reasons why staff need to, interact during the day, and so there's frequent walks year-round, wintertime, in which our staff are just kind of walking across the street, and again, losing productivity there. We have work conditions for our municipal employees. Again, that's a problem that we've identified that we need to resolve. If you go into the treasurer's office here in Town Hall, you can, at one point, if you literally step 3 feet to the right, you will drop about a foot, because that's how terrible the floors are in that portion of the building. We're looking at parking, confusion by those who live and seek to conduct business in town. While I was in the Ritter building for about 45 minutes taking some of these photos, I believe there were about three different members of the community who came in looking for a service that wasn't offered there. And again, this just speaks to the amount of time that staff report spending in the day kind of giving directions, never mind if you have someone who is disabled and they're having to come in rather difficultly through the side entrance and then finding out that they're in the wrong building. It just makes it even more complicated. We're also trying to address those storage conditions and capacity for those town records. Many records are now digital. However, several records need to be kept for a certain duration of time, and some records need to be kept forever. And also, the problem with minimal opportunities for interdepartmental collaboration and having a more homogeneous work culture. So for school departments, we're trying to also solve some of their storage concerns.
Next slide, sorry.
Yep, thank you. For school departments, we're also trying to resolve some of their storage concerns, their decreased synergy with the municipal departments. Again, the working conditions for our school administration employees, cap capacity for extended day services due to the lack of availability of additional classroom space. And then the inadequate electrical supply. So this building was just not intended to be an office building. It was intended for children to use classroom space 69 years ago. And so, 68, 69 years ago. And so the electrical problems that are experienced are, what staff report are that they can't have everything plugged in. So everyone has a computer and a monitor and other accessories that go with it. And so, you can't have air conditioning and the copy machine on at the same time. And we also have a really antiquated electrical supply system in the building. It was probably a bit old when it was put in, but it certainly is antiquated now. And then also the low roof does attract children, and there have been several reports of children getting onto the roof of the building, which poses a hazard to both them and the building itself. And for those community members, we're trying to solve a couple things. And I want to just speak for a moment. When we talk about the town budget and how we allocate our funds, we commit 0.25% to senior-related services. We commit about 60% of our budget going to school functions, and the rest are for primary functions in town. There really is nothing that the town does for people who do not have children in school, and minimally for people who are seniors. So, when we talk about that age group that is above the age of 18 and that is below the age of 55, this is where this community space really comes in. We have that lack of meeting space that can accommodate, first of all, public participation. Those who've moved into Lunenburg with a town meeting structure want to get involved, and right now you have one meeting room and 2 conference rooms. Those conference rooms can hold about 8 to 10 people. We have a lack of meeting space for public education, for seminars, for support groups. People suffering with grief, the opioid addiction, we simply just don't have the space for that. The inability to broadcast all board and committee meetings, that if we want our residents to get engaged and get involved, we can't broadcast all meetings because, again, we currently have one room that has that technology and then 2 others that don't. So it's also the inability to offer our disabled residents access to our primary public meetings through the front door, which is a civil right. This is not something that is really, we have a lot of wiggle room on. As a civil right, we must offer all residents the ability to utilize public buildings, again, through that front door. And that's as per the American with Disabilities Act. And as we've gone over, we have an aging building at the TC Passios that clearly requires millions of dollars in capital rares just to continue using. And then, again, that lack of affordable access to a local commercial kitchen to better support our farming community and others. So what this rebuild design accomplishes, and really the renovation does as well, is a couple of things. It provides that additional parking for school-related events. It gives that space for community meals. It provides, the new build provides municipal space to account for future growth. And then both plans, what they continue to provide, again, is that centralized voting location, those child support services which facilitate members of our community being able to go to and from work. And it maintains the use of the gym by the Boys and Girls Club and the senior center, a population for whom it's extremely important to remain active. So what we get to do with this plan is we get to maintain our nice, idyllic hamlet, town, village center. And we get to, and this resolves fully all of those issues that we're trying to address. It resolves those priority community municipal space needs. It consolidates our resources to improve collaboration. This best supports our community programs. The new build is a future-proof design that anticipates changes in future use, multi-generational space that invests in our community's values, and it creates an opportunity to better preserve our historic structures. And really, this is through the reuse of the building and providing space for culture and additional community needs. And that would be through the reuse of the town hall and of the Ritter building. So the funding source for this article, and we're going to breeze through this pretty quickly because, again, this is not the nature of this public hearing, but the funding source for this article is just identified as being certified free cash, which, as per state guidance, this would be an appropriate usage of those funds. You have to get through, it has to
Yep.
do its animation. It's all right. So when we talk about cost escalation, and what I've plugged in here is this is the cost of doing nothing. I think that we've all been spending time trying to figure out what this economic solution is. And so this plan,
Sorry.
it's okay. It's, because of the animations, it has to go through the whole.
Yeah, I think I hit it too many times.
We'll just have to wait a second.
Bear with me, yeah. It's an advanced preview.
Yeah, it's an advanced preview of how we've investigated solutions. So we can read through this and make it a little easier to come back to here.
I think it's gonna go back, though.
All right. Maybe not.
Oh, I hit it.
There we go. All right, so cost escalation. So what we're looking at here is the cost of inaction, the cost of delaying decisions here. That if at Springtown meeting, we're at a point where we can move forward on this project for $28.97 million, and this is plugging in a renovation cost number, you know, what happens to this cost based on a 4% escalation is, you know, is what's depicted here. So we see that a 1-year delay here is a 1.16 million. The project would end up costing $1 million more. A delay for 2 years is almost a $2.5 million increase, and a delay for 3 years is over $3.5 million increase. And ultimately, you get the same building. It's just going to cost more to get. Now, the right side also depicts today's dollars, and this slide, how we've identified these numbers is utilizing the construction cost index. So we've talked about the fact that construction costs are generally up this year. It's a variety of factors. So construction cost index looks at the overall material cost increases year to year. Typically, it's about double of the consumer price index. It averages about 4.4%, but typically we plug in a 4% escalator here. And so this just identifies if we were to build that middle high school that we built in 2016, that we started building in 2016, that same building would cost us $9 million more now. And why do I say 9? It's because the state funded half of this. So although our contribution would be $4.5 million more. And the public safety building that we built almost 20 years ago would cost us now about $4 million more. So how have we investigated solutions? 2013 to 2017, we had the Building Reuse Committee. So this was an investigation of all town buildings located in town center. It was around, in this time period, was also where we created the Village District to create this kind of commercial, vital town center. And so it was looking at how to best use the property to promote that end, and also really just what's the best use of every single building. And this came after both buildings, both the primary school and the TC Passios, were transferred from the school department over to the town for municipal purposes. Now, the key results here of the Building Reuse Committee is that most of their recommendations involve some form of a partnership with many of their recommendations involve some partnership with private entities to help help create those kind of best uses. As these were presented to town hall, town meeting, all of these articles failed for several reasons. And ultimately, the impact on the town is that it was a pretty clear message that the town was interested in keeping these buildings within town hands. Now, one thing to note here, and this was stated at that time, was that when we talk about how much money we've already invested as a community into coming up with some kind of design or plan for these properties, basically what the town was seeking to, what the Board of Selectmen was seeking to do during many of these votes was say, hey, we can't get someone to spend this kind of money to come up with a plan if they can't negotiate with us in good faith to be able to buy the property. And so it was seeking to give the select board the authority to negotiate to the sale or lease some of these properties to private entities for their development. And again, that was declined by the voters at town meeting. We also had the TAPE study, which was just an assessment of those primary town facilities to say, hey, we got to do something here. What can we do? What is a condition? What are the recommendations? And the Vertex report was a visual assessment of the TC Pastos building as well as other town buildings to identify what they are. Now, the TCP Design Committee was created in 2019 to look for, based on the TAPE, Vertex, all indicators were that the TC Pastos building was best conditioned for a consolidation of town offices, school uses, and community uses. And so this committee was created to identify how that would work, what that would look like. And also in 2019, so that was in May of 2019, in which the town meeting appropriated those funds, and that summer is when the select board created the TCP Design Committee. In 2019, at the special town meeting, we also had a survey to help identify potential uses for 30 School Street, which is the old primary school. And so there are 6 options that were presented to residents during that time. So option 1 was a town hall, option 1 was a town green, option 2 being a parking lot with green space. There was an option to renovate the primary school into a new town hall or to tear it down and build a new town hall, to convert the property over to senior housing, or to convert the building over to be a small business building to help promote small businesses here in town. So when we asked residents what their first preference was, 45% said this concept of a town green or a lot with green space. We looked at the second preference, the interest in the town green or lot increased. We saw a slight decrease in the interest in the town hall. Now, when we asked residents what their 6th preference was, the thing that they'd like to see the least, 14% said this town green lot with green space, 55% said a town hall. Now, this together has kind of guided how the select board has moved forward in our approach to coming before the town with solutions here. So the intention here is that if this, and this, I have to adjust this slide to better reflect the reality of where we're currently at. But what this slide anticipates is that if we were to move forward with a new building, that the intent would be that with the design development funding that will come before the town in the spring for that town hall community center funding, that also in the spring the select board will present an article to move forward with creating this town green and providing that additional parking at the old primary school location. And then also that would be the beginning of this establishment of a historic town hall and Ritter Building Committee to identify what those best uses are to preserve the historic structures and again to enhance the cultural and economic interests of the community. So the next slide just gets back to the language that's really not up for discussion tonight. But again, this presentation is provided because of really the first half, its background and giving some history to what it is that we're trying to do, the problems that we're trying to resolve, and why this is these solutions are being presented.
Okay, I will stop my share. Okay, so I will now open it up to comments from the public, questions from the public, and I think we have a couple. So I'll take a couple folks in attendance. So if you're on Zoom, you can raise your hand, use the raise hand feature, or just come to the podium if you're here. And I'll acknowledge Mr. Beardmore first.
Thank you for recognizing me. Out of curiosity, does that represent the number of people that are in the Zoom? Yes. Okay.
Does.
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Peter Beardmore. I live at 282 Pleasant Street, and I want to stipulate tonight that I'm speaking on behalf of myself. Like many of you, I also volunteer a number of hours to the town, and in one of those capacities, I sit and chair the Finance Committee. But I am speaking tonight on behalf of myself, although I will share some financial information, most likely, in my comments. I'm going to try to be brief. I I've spent a lot of time over the course of the last few months following this. I've watched probably about half of your meetings, and I've probably spent nearly that amount of time talking to Mr. Jeffries on the phone for the last 2 months. So I'm very familiar with nearly all of the merits of this discussion, but I will try to be brief, though I could probably go on as long as he spoke. But to that point around volunteerism, I think that, you know, the town owes you all a debt of gratitude. You've put in an enormous amount of time. Most of you sit on other committees. And there's no way to thank you enough for the work that you've done and the quality of that work. I think that it's been excellent. Unfortunately, we're all victims of the time and place that we sit right now. You've done your work through a pandemic, and that pandemic has now put us into a hyperinflationary period, at least with respect to the building trades, if not with respect to the economy at large. And I'm going to separate my comments tonight into two areas. One is money, and one is use. I'll talk about use first because it's a little bit easier and it'll be quicker. When this committee was first formed, it was formed on the assumption that I think we all made when we funded the initial design funding in regular town meeting in May of 2019, excuse me. We all assumed that renovating TC patios would be a frugal means to accomplish many of the challenges and needs that Mr. Jeffries has outlined. But what we discovered along the way through your hard work is that, you know, codes are not necessarily what we all anticipated, at least I didn't, when I voted for that article. The fact that we need to bring this up to current code for current use when we renovate that building. And obviously the hyperinflationary period that we've entered. But the opportunity there was to use a 55,000 square foot building that sits there today that is already in use for a number of purposes. And so you properly went down the path of figuring out how to go about using that building for purposes of town offices, for purposes of school department use, both administrative as well as some programmatic use, and for community use. And I know that you really kind of delayed your process in the summer of 2020, specifically to interview members of the community and leaders of community groups to determine what the appropriate uses would be. But that consideration that you made was given the envelope of a 55,000 square foot building. And I understand that you made your priorities based on the needs, certainly, but you were constrained by 55,000 square feet. No more and no less. It was a set amount of space. Now, earlier, there was some assumption, in fact, I'm one of those people that made the assumption that, in fact, it might not even be 55,000 square feet. There might be a portion of that building torn down. And we would start with a smaller footprint and then you know, kind of go from there. But it was your determination that the needs merited whatever benefit we could gain from the economies of scale of renovating the building in one project, and I understand that. Fast forward to 2021, in the realization in the spring of 2021 that we were at a $23 million price tag, and we realized that we needed a comparative cost. And appropriately, again, you took the step of doing an apples-to-apples comparison. Exactly what the town asked you to do. You did that job, and you did it well. But somewhere along the line, we have taken a leap to say that we need the exact same use for a renovation that is going to cost substantially more, or a new building that is going to cost even substantially more than that. And so we have this this problem, this paradox, I'm not quite sure what the right word is, but we have this problem between what we need and what we can afford. And I think Mr. Baelish said it very well last week at the Finance Committee meeting. You know, we've done the analysis of what we need. have we done the analysis of what we can afford? Have we really prioritized this and worked backwards from here's a reasonable amount of money that the town can afford, now what can we do for that money? And how can we continue to run the programs that we still need to continue to run, maybe not in new space, maybe in space that we're vacating in Town Hall or Ritter, and consider those costs. That hasn't happened. The assumption is that we need 55,000-ish, almost 60,000 square feet now. And I think that's a real problem that we have today. And unfortunately, you really haven't been put in a position under your charge to deal with that. I understand the way town government works and how the select board works and how the building committee works, but that's where we are. And that's one of the reasons why you haven't failed, but you haven't been put in a position to succeed given the circumstances. And given those circumstances, I really don't think, I disagree with Mr. Passios, I don't think that the town is at a point where we can properly consider this and make a positive move forward that can work with the support and the consensus of the town. I purposely asked how many people were on the Zoom tonight, because if you look around the room and you look at the number of people in the Zoom, I think that is also somewhat illustrative of the problem that we have here. Now, I recall back when we built a new library, it happened to be the year of the 275th anniversary of the town, and we had about 150 people marching down the road chanting, "Let me tell you about the library." That was support for a new building project that really had the imagination of the town. The new middle high school passed overwhelmingly. It had the imagination of the town. It had the support of the town. The public safety building, same story. We're not there yet with this project. And for that reason, I think we need to pass over these articles and spend 6 months to kind of reset and rethink this a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about money now. Before we went to the public forum portion, Mr. Passios explained that the town financial advisor has run a report that goes through what the contributions will be on an annual basis for the average residential tax property. For those of you who might have watched the Finance Committee last week, I can tell you that my back of the envelope math was actually accurate. And we about landed on those numbers exactly. Every dollar that we are spending on this project is literally coming out of the wallets of the residents of Lunenburg. There's no state money coming out, there's no matching funds, there's no grants. This project is entirely funded by the taxpayers of Lunenburg when we go to construction, the debt exclusion projects. And the numbers are substantial. They're ranging, from the low 400s to the high 500s per year for the average residential property. I'm sorry, I'm not going to look at the exact numbers and waste your time.
I'm sharing
You can
the
look at
screen.
them. Okay, they're on the screen. There is one problem I would just tell everybody with this. These spreadsheets do assume the escalated costs for TC Passios, but they don't use the same proportionality for the estimated costs for what we might need to do to Turkey Hill down the road. So in a way, these cost estimates are a little bit conservative. But I wouldn't. I still think that they're valuable to consider what the average what the average resident may go into spending on this. But it's important to emphasize that individuals and families are going to be supporting this, and they're going to be supporting whatever we need to do at the end of this decade to deal with Turkey Hill. But they're also going to be asked to continue to support every town function that we run today. And we operate in a state that has a tax cap of 2.5% on our regular tax levy every year. And we've been able, for about 30 years in Lunenburg, to do that without a general override. We've kept up with basically a 2.5% accelerator on our regular levy. The problem is that doesn't work super well if you're entering a hyperinflationary period. All of your costs go up. The cost to run our school department has gone up on average about 3.5% over the course of the last several years. Our state aid over the last few years has been relatively flat, and what we learned a couple weeks ago at Finance Committee is it's probably going to stay relatively flat for the foreseeable future. Last night, the town manager announced that the select board has come to a collective bargaining agreement with our firefighters for a 3% cost of living adjustment for next year and about a 7.7% cost of living adjustment for the year following through some changes in the way their pay scale is set up. And that's not something that we can't do. We kind of have to do this because in Lunenburg, our firefighters are underpaid. And we have to attract good talent. We have to attract qualified people. This is a cost that we have to absorb, but it's just illustrative of one additional cost that we're going to have to take on as a town to operate the town. What we learned a couple of weeks ago at Finance Committee was that if you look at towns of comparative size and comparative property value and income to Lunenburg, awful lot of them have passed overrides over the course of the last 10 or 20 years. And the state formulas actually kind of consider that as a fact. They expect you to contribute more than what is part of the 2.5% levy in certain communities. We haven't done that. Why am I dwelling on this point? Because there's a very strong possibility, particularly if we remain in an inflationary period for a number of years, and there's a possibility that we're going to be there. I don't know, I'm not an economist, as I said last week, I don't think any of us are. But we're going to have to ask the taxpayers for additional revenue to support the town's operating budget. Now, if we see a gigantic tax increase for a new building project, and we're looking down the barrel of another new building project for Turkey Hill, and now we have to go pay for another tax increase to operate the town, most taxpayers don't see this as excludable debt, an increase within the levy, more excludable debt. They see it as my tax bill just went up 30%. And in some cases, that's what some people experienced with the tax increases with the the middle high school project. So Mr. Jeffries and Mr. Roy just spent, well over an hour talking about the needs that we have and the plans that we've had to address those needs. But we've done it outside of the capacity of what we can actually afford to spend and what's a responsible approach to continue to run the operations of our town. And I think that the paths that we're potentially going down have not considered that in totality, and therefore it's risky. And I think that the voters are aware of that. I think that's why a lot of us have sticker shock over the new numbers that have come out over the course of the last few weeks, and why people aren't rallying in support of this. I want to make one more point before I conclude, and that's the two articles that are in front of that need to be either passed over or voted on. We're gonna vote to hear. I fully support voting to hear your report. I think we'll have unanimity around Article 6. Article 7 and 8 are the ones that bring some controversy. But Article 7 asks for about $29 million in debt exclusion, and it requires a 2/3 vote to get approved at town meeting, 2/3. And then it needs to go to the ballot and win a majority from the same voters and taxpayers who are going to be funding this in the way that I just described. The next article, Article 9, asks for $350,000 to continue the design efforts for a new building. That is a majority plus one, that $350,000. Now, I'm not going to get into the free cash policy. I'll save that for next Tuesday. I know you guys have probably all heard it from me, so I'll save you on that one. But my point is that if you don't believe that 2/3 is possible, but you do think that 50 plus 1 is possible, you're going to put us on the path to a nearly $40 million debt exclusion in 6 months, which, as Mr. Passio's outlined, that we've learned from the financial consultants, do put us well beyond the debt service proportions that we've ever done in Lunenburg as a percentage of our total tax levy. And so I think that combination and that combination of thresholds is also potentially dangerous and risky. And I think that for that reason, and it's no indictment, again, on this committee or any of the opinions that anybody has here about it, I think that it would be better for the town to spend 6 months and think about what are the potential alternatives, or if there are any, and they may not be. But let's have that discussion. Let's have the discussion about if we started at 20 million, what could we afford? I don't think that we've had that discussion. And then the final thing is, I don't think that the opportunity for historical preservation for this building and the Ritter is a complete enough thought. I think we need to do a little bit more thinking around what that really means and present that in a way that is more tangible to the residents of Lunenburg. And the reason why I believe that is about 800 yards behind me, which is we thought that we had this wonderful opportunity about 20 years ago that we still haven't solved for. And it's an embarrassment, quite frankly. And I don't want to see this building or the other building across the town common fall into that fate. And right now, I don't think that we have even an inkling of a plan for how to get there. And I think that that also is going to detract from that 2/3 or that 50+1. We have more work to do, and I think that we can maybe not solve for it, but get a whole lot further knowing what we know now, thanks to the work that you've done. And I would be more than happy to volunteer my time to help us get there over the course of the next 6 months. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. We'll open it up to the board after, but I just want to make sure we have folks, everybody that wants to speak can speak from the public, so.
I don't have anybody on Zoom with their hands up.
Okay. I'll just give a quick pause just to make sure. Okay, anybody from the committee? Mr. Jeffries?
Yeah. Well, first, good evening. I always appreciate Mr. Beardmore's comments because I think that Mr. Beardmore comes from a place of logic and reason. And, I'm not saying that to flatter Peter at all, but really because I see the work that's done. In this space, I disagree with a lot of things. I find that Mr. Beardmore is someone that I agree with far more than I disagree. I think that a lot of your comments tonight were appropriate, and they echo kind of what I was going to say, so I'll be a little more brief with my own personal comments. I think that we went into this with certain assumptions. I think we've assumed that this building cost would be less than $20 million. That wasn't based on a conversation that we all had as a group. I think that was just kind of individually in the back of our heads. And also we had the TAP-A study and the Vertex report, which gave us indicators of what this project would cost. Those indicators were significantly lower than what the project actually came out as being. I think that, going through this process, what made me want to be a selectman and why I am one right now and I'll plan on running for re-election, so probably hopefully we'll be one for at least 3 more years, is to help get us out of this building crisis that we're in. I think that many of us possess these skill sets, and the hope is that we can utilize our skill sets to the betterment of our community. It's a lot of work doing all these town meetings and being on so many committees and boards, and I anxiously look forward to getting this resolved so I can go back to doing what the vast majority of Lunenburg residents do, which is not participate. And I don't say that disrespectfully, it's just the truth. One of the things that Mr. Beardmore said was about working backwards on cost. That's a little more challenging. I don't know if we have a good history of doing that. I don't know if we went into the school project saying we're going to build a $40 million school. I think it was an assessment of needs that then graduated into a cost, and then we assessed if we could afford it or not. And similarly, I think we've walked down that same path with this project. It's just the way that building projects are structured, that we went into this with educated information. There was no assumption that the costs would be anywhere near what they are now. And I do think that once you have a cost that's $30 million, that it's worth pausing and saying, all right, you guys, is this really the best of the best that we can come up with? And as a selectman, I don't think the answer to that is yes. So I can't support moving forward with the project because I think that the select board needs to spend the next 6 months aggressively identifying and ruling out and clarifying why there are no other options. The decision was made prior to my time that there needs to be a consolidation of town offices, school offices, and community uses. Now that we're looking at $30 million, is that worth revisiting? That consolidation. I think that that's a question that the select board needs to answer in their attempt to provide the town with some form of policy guidance. So, now one thing about money and cost is when do we renovate buildings? We renovate buildings when the economy is good, and we don't renovate buildings when the economy is bad, right? And half the time the economy is bad, and by the time you get a building project going, you're usually a couple years away from that tipping point anyway, or we may have already passed it, who knows. I think that the work that this committee has done has been stellar. In my summarizing my comments tonight, I think the work that this committee has done has been stellar. I think that in my gut, I really do believe that we're going to find ourselves at a point come the spring in which we need to put forward an article for about $30 million to build a new building or renovate a building. I think that that's where we're going no matter what. I think that we also need to have a shift in our community about how we spend money. Why cities are able to do this stuff easier is because it's a consolidation of power. And in town meeting format, we have to convince a majority of people that something is necessary. And people are really emotional about children, and so we don't have a problem with things passing if it benefits kids, such as a library, such as a new school. Where we have problems is when it comes to that population that, again, is between 18 and 55 that does not have children in the school system but has a need for additional services. We also have difficulty with the senior citizens in our town in the sense of their willingness or desire to participate in what they see as a 20, 40-year-old attempt to resolve a problem. I think many people are just exhausted by all of this stuff. And so they're hoping that we come up with an answer and a solution that's cost effective. Now, two things to note before I finish is that if we say that this should cost X amount of dollars, that is based, unless you are in this industry and this is what you do for a living and you design these kind of buildings every single day, that cost is really based on your own opinion that's not founded in fact. The fact is that if we want to do the things that we've said that we want to do, it's going to cost us almost $30 million. That to me is a fact. So then we need to recalculate, is this really what we want to do? My answer to that is how can we not? How can we not? We have a town hall that's falling apart. We have a Ritter building that just wasn't designed for its current use, and a TC Pascal's building that clearly has issues. What we haven't had, and I know that some members have said stop saying this because you're inviting problems. What we haven't had is our town employees go to their union and speak up about their working conditions, because I will assure you that when they do, no reasonable person will look at the same photos that we just looked at and say it's okay to do nothing. No reasonable person could say that. If you speak to any town employee, I don't know any of them that say, yes, we have great working conditions, or even our working conditions are acceptable. So while we may have a gut feeling about this is going to be $300 more a month, the reality is that this is what happens when we can't make decisions in an effective way. Our town is we're about to hit 300 years. We haven't built a town hall yet. Maybe if we built one 40 years ago, it wouldn't cost us $30 million today. But we didn't do that 40 years ago. Maybe if we did this 20 years ago, it would cost us less today. Guaranteed it would be less than half the cost. We didn't do that. So now we're talking about 30 million, and the longer we keep talking, the more this cost is going to keep increasing. So I think we're at a point where we have to do something. I'm okay with 6 months. I'm not okay with doing nothing.
Okay. Anybody else? Yep, go ahead, Christina.
So echoing what Mr. Michael Ray said, kids are in that building. People forget, kids go to TCP. You're sending your kids to this building. You're sending kids from the Boys and Girls Club to this building. You have employees working there. And I fully understand when I first joined the board, I was very hesitant. I did not like the idea of the town hall and kids being next to each other. I was very, very hesitant, and I made it very vocal. Seeing this building evolve and what it's become today, I'm okay with that. You want to separate these buildings, that's fine. You want to build 3 different projects, that's fine, but it's going to cost the town more over time. The town's trying to find the best way to meet all the needs at once and find it in a more affordable way. None of us joined last week thinking we'd be getting the price tag we got. It all hit us in the gut. It hurt. You can keep saying, well, we can move things here, we can move things there, but how much life does a Ritter building really have? And what are you going to put there? And then at what point, when that is no longer usable, what are you going to do with that? We just keep putting Band-Aids on problems. We need to spend the money and find a solution to fix what is wrong, so we don't keep dumping money into buildings that they're not made for that and they're not purposed for that, and costing the town millions more when we could just invest in either renovate or rebuild or find something that finally works and meets the needs of the town for the long run.
Anybody else?
Dave Blatt, I'm going to talk more of it as a resident. Actually, I'll talk first as a committee member. Right? First, when we looked at this committee and we looked at things, I think the biggest thing that we got out of this was how much originally we looked at it as town offices, school offices, and things of that sort. But what we've soon quickly realized was how much the town, the community, wanted to see or needed from a building. And I think that was really the key. So, I mean, I know we've talked about, how much could we have used, or could we have torn down a wing? But I think we found the opposite as a committee. We found that we could have built a second wing, a third wing, or a fourth wing, and still filled it up. There was many folks lining up, looking for needs, saying that they've outgrown and outdone the buildings. So that was really a key and an important part that I learned when I first joined the committee. The other thing learning was the school use. Now, the school use is there, and if we don't do something, or if we don't provide for school use, that school use has to move to another building or another entity. And that is, we got lucky with the middle school, high school, in that since it was all for what the state wanted, it got proper funding. But nothing that is in Passios, that is in school use, will be funded by the state, will be provided, that the state will give us help. So that cost is there, whether we do this at Passios, whether we do this at the renovation of the Turkey Hill or something, we're going to have to add that cost. So I differ with what I heard, I got presented today for the first time, of the cost for Turkey Hill, because that's not factoring in that extra 10,000 square feet that we found was necessary for school usage or anything like that, and building an addition to Turkey Hill for that. So what I'm saying is that this town needs to step up and do things now when we can. I agree that looking at this building and seeing what should be done is a great idea. But the fact of the matter is that if that's the case, I think most folks are going to find out we could do even more for this building, more for the community, more for the residents that are in that area that would need it, that can benefit. And we can make this into a wonderful community center, not a town hall, not a school building. It's a community building that this town has nothing that compares with at this time. That's it for myself.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll just
Mine's teeing up.
All right, 1 second, Dave.
That's fine.
Brian Leighton. Just as a citizen, I think a lot of citizens don't know the disrepair that these buildings are in, and the urgency at which we need to act sooner rather than later. Speaking as a committee member, I feel like it is in our purview, in our duty to bring forward articles for the town to make a decision on. I know there is definitely that concern that the price tag is higher. and that is something to consider. But I still feel that the town should make a decision on this.
Go ahead, Dave.
Actually, I'm going to be relatively silent. Everybody's had their say. Excuse me. And I appreciate everybody's position on the matter. I again only want to repeat that what we need the most now, or this committee needs, is for the citizens of Lunenburg to show up at special town meeting on the 17th, hear this story again if you, well, assuming you're hearing this recording, you're hearing all of what will be presented there, but bring your friends that are also taxpayers so that we can have a full, thorough discussion with as many voters as possible. This committee has done its job tenfold, I believe, personally. I will make one comment that at the beginning of this process, I believe in the very first or maybe second meeting at the most, I made a public comment that although my dad's name is on the building, I would work to come up with a proposal that was best for the town. Again, I'm not real happy with the number we came up with, but there were other driving factors that created that number. But I think we've come up with the solutions we were tasked to come up with. There are two viable options that take care of the needs and the deficiencies of the building, whether it be torn down and rebuilt or renovated in its present footprint. But as I and many of my friends here in Lunenburg tell me out on the street, it's time to do something. And it's time to let the voters decide. Thank you.
Sure.
You know, one thing that, my only thing I'll add is that in my capacity as a member of the select board, which I consider myself to be a selectman, so as a selectman, I liaise with the Council of Aging, and I did approach the Council of Aging about this project. I think overwhelmingly, the feedback from the representatives from the senior community is that there will not be support for moving forward in this direction for a variety of reasons. It was kind of a split, let me change that. It was kind of a split discussion. Several people said, we need to do this, we need to do this now. But others had concerns about the cost of their taxes and the fact that there has been a shift. You know, there are many people who live in town who retired 25 years ago. And 25 years ago, you know, the money you worked at your job was just different than the money is today. And so people have said to me, you know, my taxes are higher than my mortgage ever was. And so how do you approach that person who's been in our community for 50 years and who is retired and wants to be here for the rest of their natural lives? You know, many people have said that there needs to be senior tax relief. Now, senior tax relief, let's keep it real. That's going to have that means the taxes for everybody else will go up, as I think that they should. You know, because most people use the services, or at least many people who aren't seniors are using the costly services in town. But I think that I do think we have difficulty on passage, and I think it's from seniors who are looking for some sort of relief from their tax bills, not for an additional cost. I think that you have a large population in town that is between 18 and 60 who don't have kids in the school system, who are saying, what am I getting for my $7,000-8,000 a year in taxes besides the town asking me for more money? So I think that there needs to be a marketing effort, an aggressive one for 6 months. In order for there to be passage, I don't think that there is a pathway to passage in the next week.
Thanks. So I'm going to speak, and I feel like I'm in a difficult, I have a little bit of a dichotomy on this because, so I'm going to speak as a member of the, I'm going to speak as a chairperson of the committee, and then I'm going to speak as a personal resident. And I think I'll speak as the chairperson of the committee first. And that is to say, and just sort of remind everybody, I'm not speaking to anybody in particular, but just to remind everybody that this committee was tasked with a very specific task, and it was limited in a lot of ways. It didn't consider things like building reuse, what do we do with buildings that might be vacated. It just, the initial charge of this committee was to develop design development documents and a cost estimate for the renovation of TCP for community uses, school uses, and town hall uses. And in 2021, at the annual town meeting, it was slightly expanded to allow for us to give the community an apples-to-apples cost estimate for what it would cost to do the same program in the building, in a new building. Excuse me, I'm getting tired. And the reason for that, what we told town meeting on the town floor last April, last spring, was that we believed that in order for the town to make an informed decision on the renovation project, that they ought to see what it would cost as a comparison to do a new build, because at the end of the day, a renovation project is renovating a 69 or 70-year-old building. Granted, an extensive renovation, given the codes that we need to comply with, and a renovation of that magnitude will give this building decades, probably 50 years of more life. But still, it's a renovation of an old building, and should the town get a comparative estimate so that they're informed when they make that decision on that amount of money. So, from a committee standpoint, I believe personally, as one member of the committee, but in my role as the committee on the committee, that the committee, I don't think the committee has a choice. We did the job we're supposed to do. We presented the articles to the town. The select board the select board may pass over them, and the finance committee has correctly, made deliberated and passed their recommendation for what to do with the articles, which is all very appropriate. But in terms of taking a vote from this board, this committee, to pass over articles, I just don't think that's in our purview to do it. I think our task was to bring the articles to the town meeting, which is what we did. And by the way, is it Article 8? Article 8, was proposed by the select board to see if we wanted to, so that if the renovation failed, that perhaps the town would want to vote and move towards a new building. By the way, both of those articles were prepared prior to knowing what the final cost estimates were. So our committee, our task was to put the town in a position to vote on those articles, which is what we've done. And I believe that we have done what we're supposed to do. We've put them forward. We've worked with the select board to have them included in the warrant article, and I believe that was the correct thing to do. And I don't necessarily think, personally, as one member of the committee, that we should vote to pass over the articles, because I just don't think that would be, I just have a sense that would be kind of contrary to what the purpose of this committee was. I think that's for discussion on town floor with the select board, with input from the finance committee, which is very appropriate to that discussion. So that's my opinion as a member of the committee. The reason why I open this by saying that I feel like I have a little bit of a dichotomy is if I shift and put my Greg Roy private citizen hat on, I agree with all of the arguments that were made earlier by Mr. Beardmore and by Mr. Jeffries. I think that well, first of all, I think that the town posted an article for a $23.5 million renovation, Article 7, $23.5 million renovation that's now, in the last 2 weeks, changed to $29 million. And I just don't think that it's fit, I just don't see how we can bring that to the town floor, personally, me as a resident now. I agree with the sentiment that because of that, that increase in price, that it may very well behoove the town to take a quick 6-month pause at least and review whether this is the way indeed we want to go. Yeah, my computer.
Yeah, that was the battery. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think
That was it. We're plugged
I
in
think,
now.
I think they're catching me on
Yeah,
pack,
they
hopefully.
are. They are. I didn't want mine to die too.
Oh, okay. So, oh, I see. Oh, okay, I see.
Thanks.
So relative to whether or not, from a personal standpoint, whether or not we should move forward with these articles, I find the financial impact to the town, the analysis that Mr. Beardmore has presented both tonight and also at every other meeting that I've sat with him at over the last week or two, to be compelling and something we certainly need to review. I personally hope, to speak to Dave Passios' comment from earlier, that regardless of whether or not these articles are passed over, you know, I do expect, I think we heard from Mr. Jeffries, we expect that the select board is going to make a motion to pass over the articles. I hope that there's still good debate on the article, whether it's in the update article or whether it's in the motion to pass over, and that we have good we have good debate on that, because the town, this committee, but really the town at large, and the folks that need to make decisions in the next 6 months, need to have the input from the town. So I hope that the town meeting is well attended, and that there are people from both sides of that there are people from all sides of this discussion that are present, that can that will speak up and give their input in it, because we need it. But having said all that, you know, I think Mr. Beardmore said it at a meeting last week. I think that at the end of the day, the town meeting makes the right call. And so if the town meeting decides they want to hear the article instead of passing over it, we have then, you know, then it gets to my initial comments, that we have done our job and we've put the town in a position to be able to hear that article, and to be able to act on that article. So anyway, that's a kind of an end around to wearing two different hats in town. But I agree with the sentiments that have been stated. I think that we did our job. We hope that we hope primarily two things were going to have happened. One, that we were going to get the information a lot sooner, and two, that the numbers were going to be a lot better, both on the renovation cost and on the reconstruction costs. But be that as it may, I think that if nothing else, spending the $54,000, the town meeting authorizing the $54,000 was fortuitous, because if we hadn't have spent that money, we would not have had visibility into, we could have brought a $23.5 million article to the floor this fall that was inadequate for the task, and we wouldn't have discovered that if we hadn't have spent the $54,000 on the new build estimate, because that's when we caught wind of the issue. So I think it was money well spent, and it gives us the information that we need, that the town needs. Nobody likes the numbers, but it's what we have, and you know, we need to, you know, it's the information that we have, and we have good solid cost estimates for what it's going to cost, and I think so. I think, you know, it's going to be an interesting. I hope that there's a good lively discussion on the town meeting floor. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. I do not need to have the last word, so if anybody else has something to add.
I'm going to let you have that one.
Yeah, so the public, I'll take a motion, I guess, to close the public forum. It wasn't a hearing, but we'll close it anyway.
So moved.
Second.
Okay? Any discussion on that point? All in favor? Aye. No opposed, I don't think, right? So that was unanimous. My computer has died, so I do not have the,
I think it was new business. Can you check that?
I don't think I put it, did I put?
We'd like to thank
There
everybody.
was something, yeah, there was new business and then adjournment.
Yeah,
But
like,
I just, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to thank everybody who joined on Zoom and who came to the meeting tonight. Appreciate your willingness to want to learn and learn more. I know this is an impactful article, but I'm glad you came to at least hear this firsthand and hopefully spread what you've learned, take whatever you've learned and spread the word to others so that they may know too.
thanks, Dave, yeah, appreciate it. So, we don't really have any, does anybody have anything by way of new business that they would like to discuss, to bring up or comment on?
Just a comment that I'm assuming that what we put together at the last meeting did make it into the ledger.
Yes,
So that will be coming out in the ledger on Friday.
yeah,
And it's a brief explanation of the 3 articles as to what they accomplish. Again, I think we've done everything we can. Special town meeting is now the deciding factor on where we go from here. I will make one comment that if all 3 or all 2 funding articles fail, there is a bit of a void, and the Board of Selectmen acknowledged this when I asked the question, that if both funding articles fail, what are we working with between now and Springtown meeting to fine-tune any of these projects? Because we will not have financial support to get support from architects and engineers as we have in the past, because the funding that's been approved will have been depleted. So we're going to be in a little bit of a limbo for a while after special town meeting if they do both fail. I leave it up to the voters. We decided quite a while ago that we would not make a recommendation one way or the other. I think that was prudent. I think we've all made it clear that we want to make sure that the proposals that we felt needed to be brought to town meeting do get thoroughly discussed. I echo the chair's comments earlier about that, and try to get some information and decisions from the voters, and give us a direction forward. Thank you.
In deference to the role of the select board, being the chief policy-making executive board of the town, I would also advise that although I have presented this board with the fact that there is a request from the select board for there to be a recommendation, I would advise that we do not make a recommendation, that it is not in our, as an advisory committee, I think it would be inconsistent with our task, our future potential charges, to make a formal position now, as I think it will affect perception of our ability to be flexible in the future.
well, we've just spent 2.5 years developing these articles, and now to say that we think you should pass over them, it just seems kind of counterproductive to me. So I would agree with that. Anybody else?
I'm just going to say, I guess we will make recommendations as individuals when we vote at
Yeah.
the town meeting. And that's what everybody should do, just individuals.
I agree.
Do we have any other formal business?
We do not. We
I
do not.
move we adjourn.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, it's unanimous.